Good afternoon, good evening, all, and welcome to the Essential Leadership Skills, the podcast, as we start a brand new series today. This new series starts off with a tremendous guest here. I think you're going to enjoy her. In fact, I know you will. Isabela Lundberg, she's a humanitarian, author, of course, a TEDx speaker. But Isabel is a trusted advisor, and she will transform executives for global leadership. She's the founder of Legacy Leaders Institute, and she brings value and more value and more value and more value. I'm trying to make a point here now, and more value to the table. So let's do not get started.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Well, good morning, Isabel. How are you today?
Good morning. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great today. Absolutely no problems, no challenges. We're going to have a fantastic day.
Yes, we will.
Next, we're going to bring a lot of value to the table here. All we'll do is make sure we don't push the wrong buttons again.
No problem. Let's have fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. We're going to absolutely have a blast. So I always start off this podcast, and even though this is kind of a new feature of going to TEDx speakers who have the knowledge and they have the ability to bring the message forward, I want to start off the same way. Now, you have quite a few things built inside your company and what you do, but I would like for you to share with us either something unique about yourself, unique about your TEDx talk, or unique about your company that people really may not know, may not be aware of. What is that? What can you share with us about that?
Wow, that is an amazing question, first of all. So thank you for asking. And it's very profound and deep on many levels. So let's answer that kind of ties all that together. How about that? Sounds great.
Okay. Sounds easy. Let's go for it. Okay.
Obviously, interesting thing, and I'm being known as the world messenger. And a lot of people get intrigued about it, specifically when they learn that my book is called The World Messenger, From Fear to Greatness, Business, Sports, and Life Lessons. But also people don't know how that story became to light. So do you want me to share?
Yes, please, absolutely.
I was growing up in, obviously, former Yugoslavia, and I endured something unspeakable as a teenager. Genocide, war trauma, and psychological torture with former Yugoslavia. Someone who's supposed to be educator, I wanted to be Olympian, but as a young girl, obviously at that time was not much invested in grooming future generation of athletes, specifically female athletes. Right. I wanted to so badly be an educator. And I remember that I used to be so fascinated by lying just in these beautiful tall grasses and watching airplanes going in so many different directions, leaving the trail and wondering where they're headed. Yes. And I always wondered so much about the world and tapestry of gorgeous, beautiful world we have. But interesting happened also. I grew up in former Yugoslavia where Mother Teresa was born. And early on, I was supporting Mother Teresa's charity. With my little money, with my grandmas and others, will send every year a little bit of money to her charity at that time in Africa. And I was exposed for the first time in my life, obviously as a little girl, to these amazing postcards and thank yous from these pictures of kids from villages in Africa and beautiful smiles. And I just knew the bigger world existed and I could not wait to explore. But what interesting thing happened in the same time, I was obviously traveling around Europe. And when war occurred, brought me all the way here to United States. With that, what also happened is that I found myself very quickly in Europe and Sweden, and then later on in the United States, to start working with people from all over the world that were experiencing similar issues, atrocities that we inflicted on each other in over 120 countries worldwide that experienced genocide, torture, war trauma, human trafficking, and rape. And through that work, over a decade, I always say, for everything else is a MasterCard, but this was truly, genuinely priceless experience.
Yes, it is.
No education in formal way, no master degree could fulfill and could taught me so much from that direct work with these individuals. And one of my biggest highlights, and I'm sure you can relate to that, I'm sure you're very familiar with different religious backgrounds and history around that. But I remember seeing vividly and working with the Sufi master, where they actually dance and then they're very happy. And remember, he went through severe torture himself. And we had this beautiful conversation around table, just a small group of us. And he says, don't forget, you're the girl that helped us restore our dreams.
Oh, okay.
And to me, that was like, you are the true world messenger. And that stood up to me, that I actually can reconnect with that later. But the reason I'm bringing that up, that gave me the opportunity to tie all those stories into something, and all the wisdom from all these cultures into something that really can help us to overcome the fear and arrive to the greatness.
You know, I want to ask you, because oftentimes it's the dreams that go on top of, layered on top of the tragedy and the hard lessons and the real price you had to pay.
Yes.
You said something early on in that discussion about just laying in the grass.
Yeah.
And just watching the planes fly over and thinking about the world. And then you also talked a little bit about Mother Teresa. Let's start off with the airplanes. How much did that affect you? Do you think, or did you ever connect that to say, okay, yeah, I had all this tragedy, but I still had this dream?
Yes, because that is what happened. And one of the things that I've been always hearing, and I couldn't understood very early, my eyes, they always said, you have the eyes full of wonder, because I was so hungry for information, to the point that from those tall grasses in my grandfather's property up in close to Olympic Mountains outside of Sarajevo, for example, just to put it in a perspective on attached nature. And, you know, as a kid, you just daydream. I was daydreaming all the time. And I was just so curious. I was curious, George, literally. Yeah. I will have a million questions that there was before, obviously, World Wide Web and the research you could do on the computer. I remember the bulging family library, but also going in the library and reading books much more advanced of my age, because I had older brother and sister, right? And that really propelled me. But to point, you will not believe this, that when I was in school, teachers specifically that taught geography and history saw how much I was hungry, because how much I read in encyclopedias and had these interesting stories. They wanted me to teach class subject or topic ahead, you know, everybody else, so that I can actually, you know, share something from my perspective, which that hunger and eyes full of wonder never really stopped wondering, and became fascinated about the globe, about the maps, about everything. So, and it was so interesting that carried on. And then unfortunate events, which are so sad, that brought us together. I remember vividly being in a refugee camp, walking around and supporting Swedish team working with the refugees from different countries, and then you leveraging my linguistical skills for people from former Yugoslavia. Right. For the first time, I had encounter to actually do meet an African person, you know, and I remember that moment so vividly, and also people from other parts of the world, from Asia, from Middle East, from Latin America. At that time, I knew names of countries, I knew countries' conditions, I knew about language and currencies, but I really never knew really about people. And those experiences were so amazing. And I remember also, this is very interesting, because when I was a young girl, I loved my currency kit, and I want to share this, and why it's so pivotal is to teach children early on. I had this little flat cardboard game, which was represented whole world at a time, in small scale, of course. And what had it little flags that I could put around, you know, pin it or around specific area, and then learn about what flags matches with what countries. But also the top currencies, not of every obviously country, but the, you know, largest ones. And I remember vividly sitting, I didn't have a nobody in the United States at the time. I didn't have no idea why I was so fascinated about America. You're right. But what was so interesting is I remember my dad vividly asked me as I was sitting on the floor, 5-year-old, all super happy that she got the birthday gift she wanted, which was that currency kit and playing, you know, and all that. He's like, what country, you know, ask me about flags and everything. And he's like, what currency do you like the best? And what country do you like the best? United States was my first response. And it was also, and when you look at it, and I could find that memory back, right?
Yes.
And that encapsulated. And when you look at my fingers, always, of course, as a child, being dirty or playing or for whatever you're doing, eating chocolate and touching everything.
Yes.
And you could tell the most worn bill was US dollar. So,
Oh,
so
wow.
when you look at that, and my dad was like, and which what do we call it, currency, or was like US dollars. So anyway, but it was so interesting that sometimes we really don't understand consciously some things why are happening the way they are.
Yes.
Till you really later on have those moments and then you start reflecting and just like how much early on I craved not only for bigger world, but how I knew deep down that my destination and my place is to be, it's United States of America.
Well, that question about that, because I heard a different lesson what you just kind of gave us. I heard the lesson that the dollar, because it was so in the flow, it was so out there and so moving around, that caught your attention. And that made me start to think about, well, some of your other projects that you have going on, that you are in the flow and some of the attention and you're just exchanging that. Well, tell us about the Good Men Project, excuse me. You tell us about that. I didn't even know that until I looked it up.
The Good Men Project was actually a foundation that they started, and they really wanted to share a lot of different perspectives. It's a blogging opportunity that I explored, that I was asked to do, specifically cater for the men. And they liked my global perspective and diverse thinking, right? Even though I grew up in Europe, I work with so many different people, was opportunity to really bring a different point of view to men. Because men were most of the readers, and men for different backgrounds, obviously men that had a not only higher education, but also men that were looking for good mentors, role models, and opportunity to engage. And I used to contribute some of those points of view, and they were also fascinated to hear about the leadership and how inclusive, because everything I do, I am very inclusive. I wanted to look at from 360 degree. And I also wanted to really look at and include perspectives that my beautiful friends taught me from all of those exposures and conversations that I had. And fundamentally, what's all about that unite us and connect us and impact us.
Well, how did you get that? Because I would think, growing up in Yugoslavia with everything going on, that you would have not seen diversity. Although you did, because you got your currency game and things like that. But I would think all around you wouldn't be any diversity. And I would think that women were strictly held back. What gave you the voice to say, okay, I can write for this? I have a message to share.
This is very, very great question again. I was growing up with very spiritual father and maternal mom, maternal grandma that gave me also amazing foundation. I was one of those probably rarest kids that chose and select to watch 4 or 5 hour long Gandhi movies with your dad when you were maybe barely 5.5 or 6 years old. So I was fascinated, as I said, about the cultures and specifically pointing to and connecting things that I read or heard about or watched through documentaries, because in Europe, documentaries are always been a huge way of viewership and interest. And for me, for Hungary, for learning, they were absolutely most pivotal in my upbringing. And my dad, even though we did not have a major diversity, we have the largest 3 ethnic groups, we had a lot of neighboring countries and minorities. And I learned so much about minorities very early on, right?
Right.
And I never really also had it very true, because born in having Italians every year down on the Adriatic coast, and then tons of tourists from other Western parts of Europe and Eastern Europe. And, we had a very little, at that time, exposure to anything else but truly Europeans, and then very few and far between people from, let's say, New Zealand, Australia, or North America, some Latin American exposure as a child. But what wasn't like, I was not involved so much in it, right? And then learning about all of that, the journey of escape and getting to Sweden blew my mind, because arriving to Sweden, then I start seeing representation of everything that I remember vividly watching Olympic Games, meaning all of these languages, people dressed in different colorful clothing, acting and behaving differently, some things that fascinate me, something that I was curious, wanted to understand why, that had a different habits, how they lived, how they interact with each other, relationships, dynamics between men and women. And I also grew up in a home that with very strong mother, that a mother figure, and obviously with strong grandma and strong mom, you just became that invincible person that you feel like you can do anything. And with that wisdom that I'm being installed, and obviously with the world that I had to face early on, let's say I was about 18 and a half, when you have to escape and you lose in a second everything you knew, including your loving father, and then you lose family members and connection with them, and you have to escape, you all of a sudden have to tap into everything they taught you. And it's just so interesting how that foundation helped me. My dad was always very respectful towards everybody. He was such a great gentleman. Everybody loved him. An interesting thing, even during the funeral, when he died during the war, everybody came from all opposing sides on his funeral, even the time of the war, because he truly was not colored ever on those ways that divide us, but he was always connecting with everyone on the ways that connect us throughout whole his life.
Wow.
And that is what he installed us. And that's what's so confusing, when all of a sudden you have these issues around ethnicity and now religion and which bucket or which side you belong and how people start treating you. And when you have exposure to that also, you start remembering, this is not the life I want to live. This is not the life I've chose. This is not something I believe in, right?
Right.
And that's how journey continued, obviously, and definitely tremendously expanded in Sweden, and blow my mind when I came to United States as a refugee after proving my refugee status, and really then thought, oh my God, I'm going to make to this amazing land of inclusion and diversity, and then new reality starts sinking in.
Well, I want to ask you something, not to embarrass you by any means, but
Please.
Just to ask you, you came to the United States as a refugee, but you also came to the United States speaking how many different languages?
6.
And do you ever notice how sometimes people here in the United States looks down on somebody who maybe is struggling with a second and third and fourth language? Did you notice that when you were struggling with your fifth and sixth language?
Yes, because English was my 6th language, actually, and I came with 5th. I knew a lot of vocabulary, and I learned a lot, British English, but vocabulary-wise, I never was formally educated in English. Because I grew up with 2 writing and reading styles and 2 languages in my own country. And in my first foreign language was actually 3rd official language. So to me it was natural, but because of necessities. And I want to share the power of learning something that matters, that can make a difference and impact.
Perfect.
And that is truly mastering the language. When I came to Sweden, the interpreter that was given to Sister and I, we couldn't understand it, let alone I could put my fate in somebody's hand who claims the knows and understand what I'm saying, and that my affidavit for immigration and status of being accepted or rejected is going to depend on someone. You were amazed that you pushed to do something, how quickly I picked up the language, and by the time we had to meet again attorney, between my German at the time and broken Swedish, I was able to deliver what I needed to deliver to attorney for my sister myself. But then also I continued to learn more, and before I know it, I was used all the time. And as a result, people from former Yugoslavia not only were better served in those legal settings, but they're better served in the refugee camps, they're better served in healthcare, social services, education, all aspects of the system integration in one country.
Wow.
So to me, discovering power of language, power of culture is a foundation that I grew up with. But I have to tell you, when people say specifically Americans, oh, we are not wired, we don't have in our DNA, ease for the languages. That's not true. That is just excuses and bias, and that needs to stop. But also have to say it was a journey. I've been always criticized for my English. Not much, maybe so much for speaking, but I remember, it's like spelling different words, because I have to say English is one of the hardest languages to learn and master from all the language groups that I'm being exposed to, because it has so many rules and so many exceptions, has an interesting structure, different spellings, and if you don't grow up with the articles, like you guys don't pronounce articles in conversation. It was the hardest thing to think about where these article comes in and what form. But luckily, over time, you just learn where your weaknesses are. You'll learn where your growth opportunity is, and you keep at it. And that's what I find it's tremendously impactful.
The reason why I bring that up is because it's almost a tweetable moment. If we believe in tweets, it's a tweetable moment. Just because this is somebody's second, third, fourth, or fifth language doesn't make them dumb. It just makes it a new language. And you got to master new skills.
Yes.
So I don't think it would hurt for any leader listening to say, okay, let me go master a new language. Even though they may never use it on the job, let me go master a new language. That's the way it's got to kind of be, I think. I wanted to also ask you, because you've had an incredible journey. And I know, as a TED Talk speaker myself and these different things, I realize that sometimes once we do these things, we don't think they're a big deal anymore. But there are still millions of people out there who want to be on TED. And it's a big, big deal to them. It's a huge thing to them. How did your journey prepare you for your TED Talk?
Wow. I love that question, and I'm so glad you asked me. Everybody thinks is walk in the park, right? Specifically because no trend or whatever. But it could be depending again on your mindset and skill set, right? Because it's a combination of both, as both of us know. First of all, for me to be on the TED Talk, it's very important to have a truly powerful message that is global message. And I remember when I was distilling, what can I talk about? And because I've been for so long voice for voiceless from all over the world, I sum it off in the topic that I felt such a burning desire that we needed to address, specifically because so much changed in the United States way before, obviously, September 11th, and then so much after that. So as a former refugee, that people just get fandom when they find that, because they could not, I don't fit the label. Are you educated, well-spoken, you're so knowledgeable, you're well-traveled, and all of those things, and you are white. It's like that doesn't exclude what people also experience on the other side of that coin and that equation and that perception. So I choose the topic that I felt, first of all, you have to choose the topic that is extremely important on global scale, that is not selfishly self-centered. You have to understand your why. And when you know your why, then that's where you start building that courageous, unwastable perseverance to practice, to polish, to test out, to deliver a masterpiece, because it is the opportunity to do that. Not only because of the brand and exposure, but also because of impact that your speech can create and has opportunity to create by giving you that outlet and that opportunity. And I remember when I decided to do my topic, The World Through Eyes of Refugee, people were blown away, because I also had a very specific black and white photo with my eyes looking straight directly at them. And reason why I'm bringing that up, it's also connecting. You have to figure out ways how to connect to audience, how to create relevant, but also solution. We know the pain, we know the problem, but what is the solution? Where are we going with all of this? And how we can create new cheerleaders and champions, right? So when you know that, first of all, you have initially some champions on your side, like great mentors that will talk to you and help you to correct you around your posture or around your delivery or choice of the words, or whatever it might be. When you get those mechanics down and distilling the story and clear it in your own head, right? That takes also time. Doesn't matter. I've spoken so many events. TED Talk is different from my keynotes. TED Talk is different from my facilitations, from my other engagements. So I had to really hone not only what TED Talk meant, but what TED Talk felt. So watching other TED Talks, watching different things that I found that resonate with me, but then also figuring out how I could come across as a woman. How do I come across as Isabela? Because that's me that is delivering the message. So you also have to own that. So that's where you go through all those stages of fear and fear of failing, fear of success, fear of being rejected, because it's such a, again, global opportunity, and you don't never know how other people will resonate, right? And fear of critique and all of that comes with that. But as soon you hone again and work towards that goal, it's a showtime. It's a showtime.
Right, right.
And you're ready, right?
Well, actually, when I was listening to your description of that, it kind of made me nervous, and I've done them. I want to ask you about the TED Talk, but I want to ask you first, how did you overcome the fear? I mean, you had a lot of skills and techniques, and I think that's what overcomes fear, but how did you overcome fear?
I've been facing the fear all my life, right? But fear and true combination with the real fear and danger, and then distinguishing those two. As a result, I always had a policy, face the fear head on. That's why I published the book prior, obviously speaking at a TED, which was interesting, timing of everything, the world messenger from fear to greatness. And I show and quote down the stages, what those stages are, because ultimately how we act despite of the fear, and how do we go head on, right, on those things. Right. And as a result, what happened, and obviously opportunity to continue to hone that message, I had to walk the talk. And by then I did. I'm thinking now, I was like, okay, I tackled these fears before with other situations. And if I could do to live in 5 different countries on my own, with no parents or no support, no mentor, no clarity, not understanding, even can I stay, am I going to be accepted, let alone where's next meal going to come, or where going to be the money coming from, am I going to be able to work, and all of those crazy things. And mind you, every single country having different language and different culture and different expectation and different position around refugees, immigrants, migrants, however you want to call them. And then trying to navigate complexity of society, I was like, I can tackle this. It's just that building the additional muscle of self-belief. And one of the things that I often share, and I just want to share this, is I've been in situations where nobody was there to pick me up or hold my hand. Nobody was there to tell me you can. And I've been defeated on my knees so many times. And I realized sometimes not anymore who is going to help me, but is believing that I can, because true warriors, the true champions, no matter what, continue on the path to greatness. And I strongly believe that because I experienced that. And then working with survivors from all over the world, I experienced that in their eyes, in their posture, in their stories. And unless you've been there and done that many, many times over, even though this is threatening, and I'm saying you have to go to this nth degree of exposure to master that, but what I'm just saying is when you put things in perspective, for me personally, was just another thing to tackle. So I'm hoping that audience can get it, even if you did not go through major traumatic events and didn't have to do much of hardship in your life. The fact that you have great confidence and self-belief and desire to do something remarkably well. I know so many people that are confident, but they don't take things seriously. Of course, the outcome will be different, right?
Right.
Take it seriously, and on top of it, very confidently, and do your work and put the effort, and you do best and continue doing best. You're going to do your job.
Wow. That's just a really powerful way to look at it. I want to come back to your book, but I want to ask you real quick about your TED Talk.
Please.
Tell us a little bit. Well, tell us two, maybe three things that were really important that you want that audience to get in the 18 minutes you have. And by the way, that's the hardest thing for any speaker to do, is narrow your speech down to 18 minutes. So, but tell us one, two, maybe three things that you said, hey, no, listen, I gave this talk and this is what you should get from it.
I really give audience the journey, the quick journey to remember something, first of all, as they were young, that they connected with, and they remember that made them feel amazingly beautiful and very proud of sense of belonging and who they are and where they are. And then I took them on the journey of what it is, obviously, and to see something with my favorite quote, through my eyes that are full of wonder, our world is so beautiful. And wow. They knew, obviously, by the time I hit the stage that I'm going to share the story through eyes of the refugee. And of course, they're like, she's refugee and she's saying this. That was the start. That was the beginning, with very beautiful supported black and white photos that I had in the background of refugee children that look so amazing. You just want to hug them. You want to just want to hold them. And it's just like this amazing, beautiful representation of what that looks like. Because it's easy to talk about something when you don't put face to it. When you put a face to it, and that changed the story, that changed the script. And then obviously I went deeper and start challenging the audience. And this is why I wanted to pause here for a second. I used a quote of Elie Wiesel: the opposite of love is not a hate, it is indifference. And a lot of times we are putting ourselves, like we're seeing here, unless it's something happening to me and my immediate family, I'm just going to tune out. Because a lot of times when we're complacent, when we're not engaging, we're proving that behavior. And a lot of times think, oh, I'm just actually staying away, I want to deal with that. And in reality, specifically today, which is proven over and over in the last just alone 12 to 14 months, what can occur if we're not paying attention and if things go too far? And I was talking about that in 2016, obviously during that talk, because every time when we're complacent, that takes you to something unspeakable, which is 10 stages of genocide. And that unspeakable thing starts with complacency, because we're not really, we are not being able to digest that. And the message that I hit them, I didn't talk about, but I used very cleverly slides. And the reason I'm again bringing this, and I listed those, 8 stages of genocide, which is number 1, classification, symbolization, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, extermination, and denial.
You know, when we look at those 8 signs, they're so easy to put back on Hitler, for example, or Mussolini, or those struggles that you had in Yugoslavia. Those 8 signs are there. It shows there. I like what you said, though, about complacency. Being complacent leads to trouble, leads to genocide, leads to events here in the last 12 months. Your TED Talk, even though it wasn't during this time period, was timely for that. Would you say it's timely for what's going on right now?
Yes, it's extremely timely, because when you look at what all of that means, when you depict those words, when you dilute them, or actually you don't have to dilute them, but some people, in order to digest them and understand them, need to. The actions are the supported in so many of those stages, what we're seeing that is going on, not only in this country, but what is going on in other parts of the world. And Einstein, I love Einstein's quotes, this particular one: the world not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything.
Nothing at all.
And if that proved, again, what is happening, because it's so hard to hear repetition of the stories in a modern time, in the last 50 years, that we have over 120 countries affected severely by this. But it's also been misperception how refugees are created. So I also shared a little bit about that, right? So that people can understand. Nobody is voluntarily chosen to be a refugee. Right. But yet why they're so hated and why they're so threatened by it and all of those different things. Because we have two classifications how refugees are created. And I wanted to really speak about it right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Because we have environmental issues. So people have to flee due to disastrous environmental issues. But we also have to take responsibility and acknowledge, because we've seen the signs, we ignore it. We do not support certain communities. We are not proactive. And as a result, we have insane casualty and pain. And then we go into these crazy rescue missions and spend way more time and efforts acting in crisis versus being proactive about a crisis. And then on the other side of the coin, we have these political agendas, conflicts, and ways how we are, quote unquote, trying to solve, control, monopolize, monetize, manipulate. We can go on so many different terms.
Yes.
And again, with someone who has a degree in global business management, who is being past educator, who work with corporations on large global scales, and also has strong education and leadership and long work in leadership. I have to say, this is not the world I see through my eyes as a refugee and the eyes full of wonder. I still think that people are beautiful and deep down wanted to do the right thing. I also see the side of the other coin that is ugly, that is heavy, that is different. And just because of environments and people exposed and don't think that is any other way, others just succumb to it. But where I'm going with all of this is I'm speaking also from experience.
Yes.
And you see that over the half of the world is being affected in modern time with things that we're doing to each other that are equally primitive and unacceptable and appalling. At this time and age when we know better, we should do better.
Well, and that's where this program starts. Leaders.
Yes.
They're the ones that have to step up and know better and do better, and to understand that you got refugees that are working for you. Okay? And you may not think you do, or you may think you're so much better, but you're leaders. We have to know better and do better.
Yes.
Have to know better and do better. And some of that really is not being fearful of things. So that's my long-winded way to ask you to tell us one or two or three things from your book that all leaders should take to heart.
That's a great question too. Obviously, and I love that you bring in time back to leadership, because I think it's a forefront of everything, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why we're also looking what the future of leadership look like. And then on the end, I just want to say, I really believe, again, people are beautiful. They're so interesting, and there's just so much to learn from everyone, from all the backgrounds and from different parts of the world. And my book, The World Messenger, From Fear to Greatness, reflected so much. Actually, I purposely created a book by interviewing only men, Olympians, coaches, athletes from prestigious sports, business leaders, because everything that occurred in my life was done by hand of man, meaning decision, authority, position, because they had the power. They were automatically given respect or leeway because they have a power. And I believe the leadership and leaders are misused as a concept very much, so it need to be separated. Because we synonymously created concept, which I'm again sure that was created by men, to somebody who has a power, he's a leader. But right now we're seeing that not necessarily person in power has a leadership skill sets and know how to lead. And as a result, we're seeing these frictions and pain points. And that's why we really need to revisit what it means to be a good leader. What is the leadership all about? And how is that demonstrated, and where that is going? And right now, we're also seeing a lot of crumbling, and not only in the United States, but in other parts of those old infrastructures because people right now will not tolerate any longer things that we're being forced to mold into it and expected to do. So with that in mind,
Okay.
my book, why I'm bringing this back, was a great opportunity because I forgive my perpetrator. I forgave things that occurred to me, my family, a long time ago. I don't hold grudges that holds me hostage for my own growth. So what I also wanted to use the book to not only understand the men better and their issues and their thought process, but men from different parts of the world. So I had a man from all over the different geographic regions sharing their paths and what they have to overcome, how much they were in situations where it was true pain points and despair and everybody that experience hardships, and how they actually learn not only better how to be better human and better about human dynamics, not just better to perform, right, but also how to impact others. So with that in mind is to really first recognize, and one of the key points was connecting back to that dream. Or reconnecting to that dream, because all of us had that eyes full of wonder, but many people sadly lost it.
Oh, that's such a key point. Connect it back to the dream.
And I wanted to, through that book, to give the thread. Doesn't matter if we were exposed in certain situations that we may not be proud, or that we were on sidelines, or God forbid actively being involved. All of those things, what do we do now when we know better? Are we doing better? And how we're doing better, and how we're facing. And when we do reconnect with our dreams, then we really quickly identify our why. And at that time, I remember also speaking and talking about the why. Right now, everybody's like, Mike, what is your why? What is your why? But even then, why was pivotal, not just in sense of from business, why you're doing what you're doing. It had to me much bigger, deeper layer, because life is too short. I very quickly learned that as well. Things are passing so fast. What maybe was why initially in different stages of your life changed. Is it still relevant? Is still important? Doesn't matter. How do you now connect that to your dream? And then it's really, every chapter has a little bit thought-provoking, a couple of pages where you have 2 to 3 questions and opportunity to write things down, and use it also as a workbook and as a reference point. Because some things you may feel like you're doing phenomenally well, but what did I just read? Beside obviously quotes and everything else and thought-provoking messages, what did I now, how do I apply this to me? Right? So the journey is ultimately taking you obviously from that to reconnect with the dream, understanding your why, many other stages that ultimately lead you. Why I'm even here, why is my purpose, and ultimately what's my legacy? Because I always thought about legacy is the top tier of leadership that ultimately creates the legendary people. People that look at and say profoundly, he is the legend, not just in sports, not in just a film industry or entertainment in general, but Mahatma Gandhi, Dalai Lama, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. Why they are such amazing giants? Why they impact so much world?
Because that's because they knew their why.
Not only that, but this is what I want to connect. People that are usually perpetrated upon and tortured, killed, are the ones that are loved by community, that have most impact and influence without force, because they use the key ingredient that very few people truly understand, which is genuine love and unconditional love. But in the same time, that's why we have a conflict, because if I want to control and manipulate and rule, you representing threat, I want to now divide all the herd so that I can control, and I have now upper hand, right? And I use the force.
Yes, yeah, the force and the yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And that's what we continue to do. Force from fear, force from what's going to happen to me, how I'm going to keep my position, how I'm going to stay alive, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do all of those things that we have in our heads that are actually not a real reality, but they're our reality at the time, right?
Right.
And people continue to live in that reality for a long time.
Well, when we talk about the challenges of today, a lot of that, if not all of it, is based upon fear of losing power. So
Yes.
once you get in that position, you start blaming others and you start segregating things off and everything. So you get the people in power, they're starting to lose that power now. So that's creating a lot of things. Tell us real quick, the name of your book again, and where can people get it?
The World Messenger, From Fear to Greatness. You can get it directly to my website, and that can be signed copy or external out to you, and on discount rate for theworldmessenger.com, or you can go directly to Amazon. I have obviously hard copy and ebook version. So
okay, World Messenger.
Theworldmessenger.com.
Okay, I'm putting that into this thing right now for us so we can have it.
Thank you.
Apps. Now, go ahead. I had another question.
I just wanted to close this thought, if you don't mind, where you were asking me this such a profound question. So I'm bringing this why we're fascinating about why we're seeing such a tremendous impact for these big names. They didn't have a power because they were the wealthiest people in the world, or because they were sitting in the biggest government groups, but they had a power because people resonate with them, because they knew that they were genuine, that they were real, they were honest, they were reflecting on the problem and trying to be part of the solution, and as a result dedicated their life to offer solution, and even if it was 1% at a time, right? So point is that we also have a new ways of how we can impact and influence. Right now, as you know more than ever, that's what everybody craves. That's what most of the leaders that are in power wanted to be influential and impactful, and wanted to be also very profit driven, and some more than less than the other. It doesn't matter. The reality is that we can obtain all of that, but you have to really look at for greater good. And why they were so phenomenal, because they look at for the greater good, bigger outside of themselves, bigger mission, bigger goals, bigger objectives. So why I'm closing with the legacy piece on that conversation, and why I want to tie and thread these different points, is that ultimately, on the end of the day, why we are here, what was our purpose, and what was our legacy, or what we wanted it to be, or how we want to change the course. Because that book also gives you the fundamental shifts. No matter where you're at, in which stage, whatever happened in the past, what did you learn? What lessons did you learn? And what did you learn about yourself? How much you self-discover? And what do you want it to do now when you know more? How can you do more and be more? Because we need more than ever phenomenal leaders right now. We have a huge deficit in skill set and mindset.
Skill set and mindset. And maybe jumping the gun a little bit, but that's where the Legacy Leaders Institute is about, right? Is that tell us more about that, the Legacy Leaders Institute. You have, and by the way, we probably could have another 2-hour conversation, but we got to be respectful of the holiday today and the time. But tell us a little bit more about the Legacy Leader Institute.
We will have soon, I promise. But just wanted to really point out, Legacy Leaders Institute came as obviously after all of this as a premier advisory group, advisory to executives, to leaders, not only through all avenues of coaching, but also true advisory, sitting around the table, understanding what they're trying to do, strategic way of overcoming and creating new processes. And then when it's needed, obviously bringing elements of coaching and consulting and helping them to implement that. Because right now we're living in the times of complexities, and we have to understand how to depict and digest those complexities in a way that we can really take action and make best decisions, obviously, before we do take action. So it is premier advisory group where we really work closely with progressive minds that really wanted to make a positive shift in business that they're doing, and as a result, impact people around the world.
No, want to wrap up, but I want to ask you something, because here's what I took away from this. You made several great points, but one of the major points that I resonate with me right now is the fact that if you want to be a legendary leader, create a legacy leader, be a legacy type of leader, you have to do what's right. It can't be profit motivated. It can't be popularity motivated. It has to be motivated by doing what's right. Those leaders in our world who decide to do what's right, they'll live on for 100 years past, if not more.
Absolutely. Their name is going to echo, because not only in the print and everything else, but also in foundations and work that others will carry on. And that's what we see for some amazing work that is already being done. I mean, why Gandhi's principles still live so long, Mother Teresa's and others? Why do we see so many amazing legendary people? Because they start not only leading with the heart, but also start really touching humanity by connecting, by creating these great, genuine opportunities and rising above of the norm. And the norm was never good enough, and it was never right norm. And we never really look at the right types of components and right types of ingredients to make that happen. We use it so much logically, we used it so much politically. We've tried to rationalize. We've tried to also compartmentalize what type of regime and system we have. I can't tell you how many times I heard, do you know that we're in a capitalistic country? That doesn't fly here. We don't need a socialistic idea or communist parties to tell us. But we fear also what we don't know and what we don't understand, and what we're afraid of the power of the other side. That is hard to control, the power of people.
Well, mind you, control yourself. the power of yourself, and that takes care of it. And as long as you're trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
There is so much more we can discuss. But I want to just ask you, is there a question that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you'd like to get out there?
Actually, you asked such a phenomenal questions that I feel like you covered quite a bit, and I really appreciate not only the questions, but this phenomenal opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Well, I'm hoping that we can continue to do a lot more work together and make a lot of difference. As long as we stay on the truth of doing what's right, I think that can happen.
And model and lead the way, because right now we need more role models. We need to show that what that looks like.
A whole lot more. What's something from today's, we've been not quite an hour, but what is one thing that everybody should take away from today's conversation?
One thing I wanted to leave you with, you are much more capable and able than you may ever think. You have amazing power and strength within. Tap into it and use it wisely. Do something that makes you afraid. Do something that you never thought you could do. Push yourself out of that comfort zone and keep pushing yourself every day. Keep building those muscles. But also start thinking, what can you do for others? What can you do to be great, not only servant leader, but really impactful leader? And how can you step more into your leadership? Because everybody can be the leader and should be exercising and practicing. I know that leadership may not be for everyone, but if you chose to, I would highly, highly recommend to look at the role model you want to follow, to understand if they resonate with your values, and then how can you build yourself up to lead better and be better and do greater good. That doesn't mean you're not good enough, but it means that all of us have opportunity to tap into much more capacity than we're allowed ourselves to do. And then obtain the greatness, be great, be legendary, think about your legacy and make it happen.
That's so perfect. So perfect. Once again, I want to just make sure that everybody's aware of the book, where to go get the book.
TheWorldMessenger.com or on Amazon. That is literally titled The World Messenger, From Fear to Greatness.
And where can people get a hold of you on LinkedIn? They can. Well, I know you're on LinkedIn, so just tell them.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to connect with me directly. I'm over there as obviously Isabela Lundberg, and I always look for people that we can collaborate. If you have any questions, anything I can be of service, or you wanted to reach out, you can do that, or just on my website, isabelalundberg.com. That is also a great opportunity as well.
All right, fantastic. Now, I'm going to say without a doubt, this is the greatest way to start this series of events. I thank you very much for your time, your effort, your energy, and I'm going to enjoy working with you again.
Thank you.